Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Stan, and I'm back again to talk about some more Magic the Gathering old school killer decks. The deck that I'm going to talk about today is called the Deadly Living deck. Now, let's take a look at the recipe. Now, when you look at it, it's, pretty dense. There's a lot of cards there, but the reason why the recipe is so big looking is because there's a lot of cards there that you only have one of. A lot of people will think, that runs the risk of you not getting the card that you want. That also runs the risk of casting a card and then all of a sudden it gets countered and then, you're just up shit's creek without a paddle. I thought so too, but with this deck, that is not the case. Now, because this deck uses the survival of the fittest and plays with a wide assortment of creatures, you'll pretty much be able to find the perfect creature for any situation that comes your way. If you're faced with a nasty artifact, get the orangutan to take care of it. If your opponent just happens to be using something like jackal pups, go ahead and put the brakes on them with the Wall of Blossoms. And for anybody who's using cards that are not black, that you find annoying or just a hindrance to your plan, just go ahead and use the Bone Shredder. Now, once you get the Oath of Ghouls in play, or the Living Death, or the Coffin Queen, you can pretty much use these over and over again, but that isn't really the cool thing about this deck. Blowing up just about every land, creature, artifact, and enchantment that your opponent plays is what really is the cool thing about this deck. Think strategically. Once you get that survival of the fittest on the table, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions about exactly which creature to play after. Know the contents of your library like the back of your hand. You think he's going to cast a show and tell to get a mind over matter into play? Get that Monk Realist ready. Or at least have mana so that you can trigger that survival of the fittest. Thus, so you can get the Realist in play as a response. Now, if you think he's building up for an expensive spell, you might want to try to figure out how much mana he exactly needs. All you got to do is just trigger the Avalanche Raiders. Now, let's say you're playing against someone like me, and I'm using the Dark Hatred deck. You can get the Spike Weaver. And I can't believe I just told you how to beat one of my favorite deck strategies. I might meet up with you guys on Magic Workstation, and then you're probably going to go back and reference to this video and kick my ass with the same strategy that I just told you. Oh well. This deck operates by you basically answering the call to whatever your opponent throws at you. Now, let me talk a little bit about the weaknesses. There are a couple of strategies that could give you some minor headaches. Really fast decks can sometimes outrace your defenses, especially if they, use like multiple Wasteland or something equally as nasty. To counteract that, you may want to try to play your basic lands first so you can build up your mana base. That way you'll be able to cast your expensive spells. That's why you got the Hermit Druids. They help guarantee that you don't miss any land drops. But now, if your opponent takes out that Druid, you can use the Survival or the Wall of Blossoms instead. But being real with you, the biggest pain in your ass is going to be combo decks. Whether it be a combo deck that uses an infinite loop, or a combo deck that knocks you out with a 1-2 piece. To counteract them, you need to take out any permanents that your opponent has on the table. If you don't know what kind of a combo deck you're going up against, it's better to play it safe than sorry. So if your opponent plays something like a Grim Monolith, it would probably be in your best interest to take that shit out before he plays that proverbial card that is going to be the final nail in your proverbial coffin. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the sideboard. It should be pretty easy for you to figure out what sideboard cards you want to bring in, depending on the kind of matchup you're going up against. Unless you're going up against somebody who's, using a combo deck. Then, odds are you have no idea what the fuck he's going to throw at you. But a good card to start off with to pretty much hose down your opponent's strategy is a Taskmaster. That ability that it has is good against other black creatures. The Daring Apprentice's counter ability is great against combo decks. The toughest match you're going to run up into is like a mirror matchup. Your best bet is to take out that Oath of Ghouls. That Oath of Ghouls could be a backfire. Instead, you should bring in 2 creatures that allow you to do an infinite combo. You get the Blood Vessel and the Cathodian. Now, make sure you get a Phyrexian Plague Lord and the Anarchist into your graveyard or into play along with both of those creatures. Now the only thing you gotta do is cast Living Death, return the Living Death to your hand. When the Anarchist comes into play, sacrifice the Blood Vessel, so you can get that 2 black mana, and using the Plague Lord's ability, kill the Cathodian. So you'll have 3 colorless mana. That's just enough mana that you need to cast Living Death again. Now once you set up this loop, there are 2 ways you can win. The one surefire way for you to win is to sacrifice the Mob Fanatic for 1 or more damage per loop. The other way only works if your opponent has a Wall of Blossoms. But it's also an effective way too, because if you can force his Wall of Blossoms in and out of play over and over again, you'll basically end up decking him. However, you could deck yourself as well. To counteract that, all you need to do is just have a Gravedigger to return the Wall of Blossoms to your hand. Alright, now let's go on to the substitutions. If you can't get your hands on a Scroll Rack, use the Fanatic Search. You can't get your hands on the Oath of Ghouls, use a Victimize. You can't get your hands on the Shard Phoenix, get the Slinger. And if you can't get your hands on the Spike Weaver, a Soul Warden will work. It's the Deadly Living deck. Very clever deck that seems to always wiggle its way out of trouble. Go ahead and give it a test run and come back and tell me the results. You know how I love to hear from you guys. And I'd like to give a shout out to all my fans, all the magazines for the source material, and as always, vote, comment, and subscribe if you like it. Anyway, I'm Stan, and that's all for now.